Hello and welcome to Best of Both Worlds. Today we have a very special guest, Georgia Stull, so stay tuned. We are so fortunate today to have Georgia Stull with us, and Georgia has been a Statler teacher and trainer, and so we want to hear a little bit about her if you haven't met her before. Georgia, can you tell us a little bit about maybe your family, where you're from, and your background on the Statler?
Certainly. I am from Harrisonville, Missouri, just south of Kansas City. My husband Ivan and I have 4 sons, and we are blessed with 3 grandchildren, one more coming. That's always fun. And we bought our Statler in 2006, jumped into it absolutely with no quilting experience. I know it's crazy.
So 10 years. You've been doing this 10 years.
10 years, and I had an opportunity to become a certified trainer and jumped on it. And I've been traveling and teaching for 6 years now.
Well, I know I see her at a lot of shows. Maybe some of you have. So we're just thrilled to have you here. And you're going to do a project for us today.
Yes, I am.
Tell us about that.
Well, I went to a guild meeting and they were doing easy peasy quilting. Was the quilt as you go, and I thought, oh, that's so hard. When you have a long arm, you don't want to do that. But then I started thinking, I never have time to piece a quilt, but what if I could piece it on my long arm and quilt it as I go? And that's what I've done. So I can do a quick and easy project, have a quilt at the end, and no, it just doesn't take long.
I know you have one finished, so this is going to be a second one that you're doing. So let's take a look at that finished project so we can see what we're going to be doing.
Great. First, we're going to use a pattern called geometric square. The geometric square is in your Statler Stitcher DXF files. I use it all the time. So if I select the pattern, it's in my pattern preview box, I select repeat patterns. And in repeat patterns, I decide how big do I want my quilt. I actually think I want my quilt to be a decent size, let's say 62 by 76. So if I come up here to the height, and I wanted it to be 76 inches, and you notice I'm putting in 76 inches, and as soon as I hit enter, it changed the width to 76. I don't want the width to be 76, but at the same time, it turned off freeze aspect. Freeze aspect says if I make the height a certain size and increase it, then the width will increase also. Well, I'm going to now put in my width at 62. And with freeze aspect off, you notice right here, this little excuse me, right here, it automatically turns off. And now I'm going to click OK. And just like that, I have a square. It doesn't look like it, but it's actually 62 inches by 76 inches. And that gives me the ability to play around with the total size of my quilt. Now I'm going to use geometric square again. And to use geometric square again, I'm going to say, how big would I like my first strip of fabric? And let's just say we want that first strip of fabric to be 12 inches high. We make it 12 inches high. And the width is, do you remember, we made it 62 inches. Let's make it 62 inches. Click OK. It's going to go on the screen. And you notice that square is sitting right inside my large square. Now it's time, let's think about the next one. I can, by the way, adjust this. If you notice, I can adjust this. If you look, let's close our repeat pattern box. And you see that now it's 16.88 inches. And now it's 13.81, or I can simply fill in a size and make it that size at 16, and my freeze aspect was on. You notice how that width changed? Turn it off, change that width back to 62 inches. There we go. So let's look. I'm going to select both of these patterns and let's move them to the side, because now all my patterns are going to enter the screen on that purple arrow. We call it Harold's purple crayon, and so that is actually our point of origin. And if you're working with your machine and not in standalone, it is exactly where your needle is. A pattern comes in relationship to your needle. So let's make the next row about 5 inches. Why don't we do that? So the height is going to be 5 inches, and the width, again, is going to be 62 inches. And I'm going to click OK. There's my strip on the screen, and all I have to do is line it right up. Now, remember, this is sort of just getting ready for the actual quilt. I could take a lot of time and line these up perfectly, but it's not really worth my time. I just want to get a view for what I think it's going to look like. Now I'm going to make the next row. Again, I'm going to choose geometric square, repeat patterns, and how about we make this one 8 inches high. So we put in 8 inches in our height, change our width to 62 inches, click OK, patterns on the screen, move it right into position. So I can continue this all the way down until I get the strips in the varying widths, heights that I like. Now let's think about how we like to put the patterns in. So if I look at this, let's pretend that we have created this all the way down, put in our rows, and then what I do is I can grab the entire figure that I've created. You see all the patterns are selected by using marquee select. Put it in, let me show you again, put it in the upper left open CAD screen and drag to the lower right. All of those patterns are selected, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to combine the patterns. That makes it one pattern. So remember, before I had 3 strips and 1 outline. Now I have 1 pattern. But what I really want to do at this point is take that pattern now, and I'm going to convert that pattern to a boundary. Why do I want to convert it to a boundary? Well, if I cannot select a boundary. Do you see how no matter what I do, I can't select a boundary? Well, when I put a pattern over it, I want my patterns to fit in here, and I don't want to fight with the patterns that I use to make my actual quilt outline. So let's look at Modern Maze. This is a pattern that I have. It's a Krista Withers pattern, and I just love it because it has lots of distinct textures into it. I see that it's actually a 15.75 high pattern, so I don't want to be putting that into my 5-inch strip, but I will put it into my 16-inch. And let me measure real quickly. This is my measuring tool on the top, and that allows me to measure on the screen. I don't have to actually measure the quilt. So if I measure from here to here, I will get my actual height, and that was 15.9. And if I measure from this side to this side, and that's 61.96. Now, if I right-click that big number, I don't have to remember it because it's going to be remembered for me. So right-click, the measure feature closes. You heard that ding, and I still have that measurement. So choose the pattern, choose repeat patterns, and remember the height I wanted of the pattern was going to be 15.9, and it will adjust the width accordingly. But when I come down here to total width, if I right-click, there's my measurement right there. See, I didn't have to remember it. I just click on it and click OK. And there's my patterns. So let's take those patterns and move them into position. Now, the good news is we can adjust and adapt those patterns to anything that we want to. Now, at this point, we're just kind of playing around. We don't have the actual measurement of the quilt. This is just to get a feel for, do I like that pattern next to this pattern? This one is a more narrow pattern right here, the next row. So let's measure it quickly. And here we go. And it's about 5 inches high. Well, you know, I think I'm actually going to use a border pattern. Let's look at Clockworks Border. It's an Ann Bright pattern. It's a fun pattern, has a nice texture to it. I'm going to choose the pattern, choose repeat patterns, and I wanted it to be about 5 inches. And I don't have to be exact. I can make it pretty close. Come in here to the total width, And again, I have in the width, if you remember right, I actually decided I wanted my quilt to be about 62 inches. So I could just put 62 in instead of using the other measurement. That's the beauty of it. There's so many ways to make things happen. So let's grab this row of patterns and see, I slide them right into position. Isn't that a fun pattern? And while all the patterns are selected, I can easily shrink it down a little, pop it up a little, pull it in a little, anything I want to do. Now, this is a border pattern. You notice that? Whoops, I lost all my patterns. There we go. You see how with the border pattern, I actually have a little tail right here. And if I pull the curl right to the edge, then that sort of leaves that little curl to the end. We have a great way to handle that. If I select that one pattern and I select F7, whoops, hang on, close that repeat pattern box. Now select F7, looky there, I have nodes. And just like this, I can pull this over right to the edge so that that tail will be off the edge of my quilt and it won't look like it's just hanging there. And I might need to do it at the other side. We can take a peek, but nope, it's good. Well, I don't know. I probably need to turn back to my purple handles, F9, to get that whole curl in, and then again, F7 to bring that tail out. I love nodes feature. And we would continue this process one pattern after another, and if we say, well, I don't really like that pattern, pull that one out, put another one in. It's just that simple. And once you get all of that designed, then it's time to load your fabric, and here we go.
I am so excited about this project because for those of you who have hand-guided machines, you can do this project as well. So thank you for showing us this because this is for everybody.
It absolutely is.
So,
and using channel locks makes it so easy to add your fabric and put in your designs.
So now we do.
All right, so the process is this. Once you get the design that you have, you cut your strips of fabric to the size that you want them to be. And I found actually because of shrinkage, and if I really want it to be exactly 62 inches, I'm probably going to cut my fabric 63 inches, and I can always trim. I can't add, but I can trim. So I would cut them about 63 inches, and then I don't have to worry so much on the edges. The first piece of fabric goes face up, and I baste it on all three sides.
Okay.
I don't baste on the top and the two sides. I don't baste the bottom because now I'm going to stitch the next row of fabric. I'm going to lay the next row of fabric. We're going to put it face down on top of what we already have. And we make sure we have that fabric underneath nice and straight. And I sort of finger place it on the quilt. And at that point, you can pin if you wish, if it makes you more comfortable. And a lot of times I will put it in channel lock just to make sure it's straight before I even start stitching. Just run that along and pull or whatever I need to do to make sure it's perfectly straight. Once it's straight, then I'm going to come over here, and channel locks are on at 0. And I like to give it a little more than 1/4 inch, just for a little extra stability. Do my single stitch, pull that thread up, pull the thread up, and here we go. And it's pretty simple. I like to put just a slight amount of pressure behind it, keeps it going nice and straight. And what we are actually doing is piecing our quilt as we go. We're going to get this straight line all the way across, right to the edge. And remember, your edges may not be perfectly straight, but if you've allowed an extra inch, doesn't matter. It'll work perfect for you. Let's pull up that thread and cut it.
I can see this is a great way to use scraps too.
It is. Oh,
I mean, all
my
those
goodness.
pieces that you have left that you cut off.
I know,
you know?
this little bit of this and this little bit of that, and then you have a quilt. All right, once that is stitched across, you simply pull your fabric down, and
Look
there's
how much more quilt we got.
it just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah.
So I don't stitch the pattern in this one until I have the next one on, because
Okay.
it's nice and stable. So I will put the pattern in this one and show you how easy it is to do that. And then
You just
keep
continue on that
this
way.
process all the way until you get the length of quilt you
That
want.
is just
You
awesome.
can even change how long you want it during the process.
Of course.
And it's just that simple. You'll want to baste on the side that little bit before you put in the pattern. And we'll just get ready here and show you how to put a pattern in.
Okay.
All right, now it's time to put the pattern into the boundary. So I'm going to select the boundary tool, that's the first icon, and I'm merely going to click out the space. A boundary merely is a visual marker of the space that I have to quilt. And I want to make sure as I'm clicking it out that my laser is actually totally within that space. I want to have that laser right on top. And I find sometimes just putting my finger right here really helps me get that laser pinpointed exactly where I want. You know, there's no right or wrong way. Everybody finds a way that works for them, and that's okay. So you'll notice that laser is just inside that line. I'm going to go all the way to the end. And in this case, I don't really care if the pattern runs off a little, so I'm going to take it right out to the edge. And then now I'm going to go across the top, and actually what I'm doing is creating a large rectangle of my space. And this makes it so that when I put my pattern on the screen, I can easily tell that the pattern will totally stay within this space. And the good news is, if I place it well, I can go do something else while it's stitching. How about that?
That's one of my favorite parts.
It is. It absolutely is. You gotta love it.
But I know Statler people like to watch.
You know, isn't it amazing? After 10 years, I totally love watching my machine work. All right, I'm going to come over here, and the pattern I'm going to put in here is called Clockworks Border. It's a pattern by Ann Bright. I choose the pattern, and I do need to measure. I know it's 62 inches, 63 inches wide. I can adjust it so it doesn't matter. And let's measure, though, with this tape, how wide we need it to be. And we need it to be 4.8 inches. Just choose the Clockworks Border pattern. Choose repeat patterns, set the height at 4.8. It'll adjust the width and come into here and change it to 63 inches and click OK. It's going to come in relationship to the needle, and I have my needle right at the top. So it pops right in. You can see it popped right into the place. I like to move my head away at this point because you notice I had my crosshairs, which are very useful, but it makes it a little tough to see exactly where that pattern's going to hit. So I can use Marquee Select to grab all the patterns and make adjustments. Obviously that needs to come in, and that one's not bad. I'm going to pull this down a little and maybe pull this up a little. And you see everything is totally within the boundary. If I want to, do you notice this space is actually a little bit wider? Well, guess what? I could take these two patterns, and let's make it bigger to fill that space. I want to fill the space nicely. And honestly, that's what hand guiders do. They just don't do all the measuring we do. They just fill the space. So sometimes we have to make allowances with the Statler. But notice that now my pattern pieces aren't connected. No problem. We have nodes. Let's close our repeat pattern box. And this little icon over here, the purple and turquoise square, gives me these little nodes, and I'm going to move this up a little. I'm going to put my E for endpoint snap on. Hear that click?
Yes.
Now I know that it is going to sew continuously, and yet, do you see how I filled the space just a little bit better?
Perfectly.
And all I have to do is choose quilt, walk over here because my machine is going to move right to where she needs to go, and pull up my thread, click OK, and we're off. And you're right, 10 years later, I'm still watching my machine move. Cut those threads carefully, and I let her do all the work.
I can see, you know, from a freehander's point of view,
Right.
this project would just be so fun. You could
perfect.
practice all of the different freehand patterns that you've learned,
And then you have a
And
gift to give away.
You have a wonderful quilt when you're finished.
Yes.
And it's all quilted and it's pieced.
When you
and
take it off, all you have to do is bind it. You don't have to do
Yeah.
anything else to it, and it's ready to go.
That's fantastic.
Isn't it fun to see all the different patterns and the relationship to each other? It's just such a fun project.
You could also write names, you know, like or a little note to your grandchildren or something like that. That would be really
Absolutely.
fun.
Absolutely.
Something special.
Right?
Yep. Well, we're both standing here watching it. It's just really fun. It's like
Just
when
about
you
there.
are doing your hand quilting, though, because you're watching all the time when
Right.
you're doing that. So it is fun. Just really fun.
It's just fun to see how the pattern designer visioned that it would stitch out too, because
And
not all
watching
pattern
how it
designers
does
do it
that.
the same.
That's right. And like you said, this could be, you could do so many of these for gifts and out of
Exactly.
scraps or you know.
And you know what I recommend? When you're cutting these strips, if you have enough fabric, cut 2 strips exactly the same, which is so easy to do, and then you have the makings for 2 quilts. And I can do 1 quilt in about 3 hours from start to finish. So 2 quilts in 6 hours,
Yep.
not bad.
There's another baby shower.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we have plenty of those to go to.
Georgia, this has been a super fun project. And piecing and quilting, and we know that people will want to try this
I hope so.
and do these projects. And so thank you for being here and showing us this wonderful idea.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really had a great
You're
time.
welcome. Thank you again for joining us, and be sure you visit with us next time. Bye.